Listen, I believed I had seen it all in my 40 years of performing bariatric surgery. Families who encouraged unhealthy eating habits and patients who hadn't left their beds in months. They had to be removed from their homes because they were so big. However, there was a hint in the social worker's voice that this case would be unique when I received the call regarding Maria Yazzie. "We need your assistance, Dr. Nowzaradan." On the Mescalero Apache Reservation, we discovered a 714-pound woman living alone in a trailer. When the neighbors realized, they phoned. For 3 weeks, no one had seen her. 714 pounds. I've previously handled more than 700 patients. However, the word itself stayed with me. No relatives came to see how she was doing. No system of support. That goes beyond simple medical carelessness. Human abandonment is that. The scenery I drove through on my way to Ruidoso, New Mexico, should have been breathtaking. Mountain views, pine forests, and undulating slopes. Rather, I continued to imagine what I may discover. It appeared that there were too many reservations. A variety of small houses and trailers, some kept up, others obviously having difficulty. Deteriorating paint and overgrown yards are signs of economic inequality. Even by reserve standards, Maria's trailer was remote, sitting at the end of a dirt road. I smelled it as soon as I got out of my car. The distinct smell of human waste, decaying food, and serious hygiene problems. I was greeted at the door by Jennifer Martinez, the social worker. I could see the shock still fresh in her eyes, and she was young, likely unfamiliar with this type of scenario. "Doctor, I must now alert you. The conditions inside are terrible." That is not new to me. I followed her inside after giving her a nod. I could not have been prepared for what I witnessed. The trailer was an abandoned tomb. Along the walls were piles of delivery boxes and fast food containers. In spots, the black-stained carpet was ripped and coiled where Maria had likely attempted to move. Maria was there, in what had been a living room, and the air was heavy and oppressive. Her weight of 714 pounds had caused the furnishings to change shape. All around her, her body spilled over the sides of what was left of a couch that had long since lost its structural integrity. Lymphedema had made her legs so bloated that the skin appeared to be about to rupture. Each breath she took was deliberate and strained. However, her eyes were attentive and observing me with a look of defiance and humiliation that I recognized right away. They called and she said, "You must be the doctor," with a voice that was remarkably powerful given her evident respiratory distress. But there was more in her voice than that. "Come to tell me I'm going to die?" I've learned over the years that patients in Maria's condition often lead with anger. It's armor against a world that has failed them repeatedly. Resignation ran deeper than her weight, and her accent was uneven. "No, I'm not here to tell you that you're about to die. My name is Dr. Nowzaradan. Because you don't have to, I'm here." There was no humor in Maria's laughter. "It's easy for you to say. You have no idea how it feels." The only piece of furniture in the room that appeared to be in working order was a folding chair, so I pulled it up and took a seat. Maria's life or death would depend on this discussion. And I wanted her to know that. "You're correct. I've seen people die when they don't have to, but I don't know what it's like to be you. I am aware of the effects that 714 has on your kidneys, lungs, and heart. I am aware that if we do nothing right away, you've maybe perhaps 6 months." Her facade gave up a little. "Maybe less than 6 months. Maria, your body is shutting down. Here's what I also know, though. I've assisted some who weigh more than you in regaining their lives and losing weight. The question is, are you interested in living?" She turned her gaze from me to something I couldn't see for the first time. Her voice was softer and more exposed when she spoke again. "It's been a while since anyone asked me that question." Jennifer had been beside the door, standing quietly, but She moved forward presently. "We have been attempting to contact your family, Maria. Your sister Sarah and brother James said they were unaware that things had gone this terrible." Maria's face stiffened once again. "They simply didn't care, they knew. I've seen family dynamics ruin patients' chances of getting better, but the loneliness I was seeing hurt more than anything else." "How recently did you talk to them?" "When Sarah visited, perhaps 8 months ago, she informed me that I was embarrassing to the family. I needed to gather myself." She paused, pain flashing across her face. "James hasn't spoken to me since. The pieces were beginning to fit together when I lost custody of my children 2 years ago, but I still needed more details." "Describe the custody scenario for me." Maria's breathing became more difficult due to mental anguish rather than physical strain. "I weighed about 500 pounds at that time. When I hit 400, my ex-husband Robert fled because he couldn't watch me murder myself. However, Aiden and Sophia, the children, remained with me. I was managing, okay. However, Robert returned with lawyers and said that my weight made me an unfit mother. The government concurred. What followed? I consumed food. I kept eating till I lost all feeling. The one thing that didn't condemn me, abandon me, or tell me I wasn't good enough was food." Tears mixed with indignation as she turned to face me. "So, indeed, I grew larger and larger till this point." Jennifer moved forward once again. "Robert's mother is in Albuquerque with the kids. Last year, Robert got married again." Maria winced as though she had been struck. "Well done." I got up to take a closer look at her physical state. "I must investigate you, Maria. Check your breathing and circulation to obtain a feel of the medical issues we're dealing with." I started my examination after she gave me a nod. At 220/130, her blood pressure was dangerously elevated. Her respiration was shallow, her heart rate was high, and quick. Her legs had significant lymphedema, and I could detect early indications of skin deterioration that might quickly turn into an infection. She was practically immobile. "How long has it been since you left this trailer?" 6 months ago, perhaps. I thought I was suffering a heart attack, so I had to call for an ambulance. They had a hard time getting me back inside, even though it turned out to be a panic attack. Decided the embarrassment wasn't worth it. I took a seat again and began to digest what I had discovered. Maria was more than just obese. She was traumatized by losing her children, utterly alone, forsaken by her family, and had given up on life. However, she was also perceptive, smart, and had consented to visit me in spite of her statements. That implied that she still had a desire to live. "I can help you, Maria, if you're sincere about wanting to live. However, it will need you to leave this trailer, travel to Houston, and dedicate yourself to a program that will be more challenging than anything you have ever done. Additionally, it will require dealing with all the initial reasons for your presence in this trailer." She stared at the ceiling and remained silent for a while. She turned around to face me at last. "What are my chances of seeing my children again if I do this? Even when the truth is painful, I've learned to be honest about these things. I'm not sure, but I am aware of this. If you stay here, you won't." I briefly believed Maria was going to say no when she closed her eyes. She nodded after opening them. "All okay, doctor. Let's do this now." However, when Jennifer started calling to set up medical transport, I knew that removing Maria from this trailer wouldn't be the most difficult part. She needed to be persuaded that she was worthy of being saved. It was like doing surgery before the surgery to get Maria out of that trailer. Although I've planned many of these transports, there are particular difficulties with each one. Maria, who weighed 714 pounds, had not been moved in months, was unable to support her own weight, and was too big to fit through a typical doorway. In essence, the body had adapted to that couch. At dawn, the ambulance crew showed up. The staff with bariatric transport experience was exactly what I had asked for. After glancing inside the trailer, lead paramedic Jim Rodriguez whistled softly. "We'll have to take out the front door frame, document." I gave a nod. I had expected this. Maria's response when she realized what was happening was something I hadn't expected. "To get me out, you're going to destroy my house." Her voice broke, and the shame washed over her once more, as I could see. "This trailer is no longer your home, Maria. It's your jail. We are merely dismantling the bars." The following 4 hours were terrible. Maria had to be carefully lifted from the couch by the crew using a unique inflatable mattress device. She hurt with every movement. Months had passed since her joints were fully movable, and extensive contact with the furniture had caused pressure sores to form on her skin. The worst aspect, however, was not physical. It was observing Maria's expression as neighbors crowded outside, some obviously there for the show, while others were truly worried. As we pushed her through the wider entryway, I noticed her attempting to shield her face with her hands. Now, as we carried her into the specially customized ambulance, she whispered, "Doctor, everyone is looking. Allow them to gaze. They won't know you when you stroll past them all in 6 months." With medical pauses every 2 hours to check Maria's vitals, the 12-hour drive to Houston. She should be repositioned to stop additional skin deterioration. About 3 hours into the trip, during one of these stops, Jennifer's calls were eventually answered by James, Maria's brother. I saw Jennifer get up to answer the phone. As she listened, I noticed a change in her face. She appeared defeated when she returned. James claims he is unable to visit Houston. He can't afford to take time off from work because he's juggling his own issues. Maria had been paying attention. "How about Sarah?" Jennifer paused. "This was your," she said, "decision, and you must bear the repercussions on your own." I've witnessed family leave patients in the past, generally gradually, using rationalizations and excuses to help them sleep. As though Maria had already passed away in their thoughts, this felt different, more like a purposeful cutting off. "Listen to me, Maria. Your family's response reveals more about their incapacity to handle challenging circumstances than it does about your value. We will concentrate on the individuals present, the individuals who decided to assist." I noticed the tears before she turned her head toward the ambulance wall. "Now, doctor, may I ask you a question?" "Naturally. Do you consider me to be a bad person? Do you really believe that I deserve this?" Every time I hear this question, my heart aches. It has been implied or outright said to patients at this level of obesity that their condition is a moral failing. The condition is exacerbated by the guilt that they lack self-respect, discipline, and willpower. "Maria, you seem like someone who went through trauma and developed a coping mechanism that eventually failed. You're not horrible because of that. You become human as a result. However, I lost my children. What sort of mom? Just stop there. What kind of woman battles for her health in order to be present for her kids? You're doing that at the moment." We reached the Houston hospital shortly after midnight. The specific bed monitoring devices and the bariatric unit were ready. Maria's situation was briefed to my entire staff. However, Maria took my arm as we moved her to the hospital bed. "Now I'm afraid, doctor." "Excellent. Fear indicates that you recognize the gravity of the situation. When the going gets tough, fear will keep you going." I started working on my thorough evaluation the following morning. What I anticipated was shown by the blood testing: severe hypertension, diabetes, liver issues, and kidney disease. Her enlarged heart was having trouble pumping blood through her enormous body. She was barely receiving restorative sleep because of her severe sleep apnea. However, I also requested psychological testing since I've discovered that treating the mental and emotional causes of obsessive eating is necessary for long-term weight loss. On the first day, Maria spent 2 hours with our staff psychologist, Dr. Paradise. His face was disturbed when he arrived to brief me. "Now, doctor, this goes beyond her husband's departure or the loss of her children. Maria is dealing with trauma from her generation. When the government closed their offices, her grandfather was forced to move. Initial reservation. Her father was a chronic alcoholic. When Maria was 16, her mother passed away from problems related to diabetes. The last straw was the custody dispute. How is she coping with everything? She believes she is essentially imperfect, despite her intelligence and awareness. She sees her weight as evidence that she is undeserving of nice things in life. Maria and I had a conversation about the surgery alternatives that afternoon. She weighed 714 pounds, which was too much for surgery right away. We had to grab her. First, a loss of more than 100 pounds, under 600 pounds. Maria, I want you to realize something. There are 3 stages to this process. Getting well enough for surgery is phase 1. This entails shedding at least 120 pounds with diet and exercise under supervision. The actual gastric bypass procedure is phase 2. The third phase is the most challenging. It involves adjusting to living in a smaller body and managing all of the emotions you have been avoiding through food. Maria paid close attention and demonstrated her seriousness by asking insightful questions. However, when I brought up a diet of 1,000 calories a day made her face go white. "I'm not sure if I can do it anymore, doctor. For so long, food has been my sole source of solace. I am aware. Dr. Paradise will therefore work with you daily. For this reason, you will receive medical monitoring, support groups, and dietary coaching. You're not alone in this." Maria received her first meal on the program that evening. Steamed veggies, grilled chicken breast, and a tiny bit of brown rice. I observed her gazing at it, as if it were something alien. Ordinary people eat this. Those that wish to survive eat this. She chewed attentively and took a tiny bite. It has no distinct flavor. That's because processed foods, sugar, and salt have been overpowering your taste buds for years. Give it some time. But I could see she was having trouble even while she ate. Given her immobility, it was especially tragic that her hands trembled a little and that she kept gazing toward the door as though she wanted to run. "Now, doctor, what if I not able to do this? What if my strength is insufficient?" I drew my chair up against her bed. "You made it through childhood trauma, an abusive marriage, the loss of your children, total family desertion, and months of living alone at 714, Maria. You believe a weak person could make it through all of that?" Maria smiled for the first time since I'd met her. "Really?" Grinned. "That's not how I always thought about it. Being strong isn't about never failing. It all comes down to choosing to get back up. Additionally, you are in this hospital bed, defending your life. The strongest thing I've seen this week is that. I knew this case was going to test me in unexpected ways as I was leaving Maria's room that evening. The psychological trauma and even the medical intricacy weren't the only factors. It was about demonstrating her value to someone who had been consistently let down by all of her support networks. However, as I went over her chart again, I saw something encouraging. In spite of everything, the desertion, Maria had endured the physical decline, the loneliness. She had persevered. Additionally, sometimes the first step toward recovery is survival. I believed we were making progress after 3 weeks of Maria's program. She was 18 pounds lighter. Steady, but not as fast as I wanted. More significantly, she was talking to Dr. Paradise, taking part in physical therapy, and starting to discuss her kids without totally losing it. Robert then gave a call. Although I wasn't present when the call was received, the nurses explained Maria's response as total emotional breakdown. She was curled up in her bed, refusing to eat and to talk to anyone when I got to the hospital that evening. "What happened, Maria?" She refused to give me a look. I got the details from Jennifer Martinez, who had remained in Houston to arrange for Maria's care. This afternoon, Robert gave a call. He apparently learned that Maria was in Houston attempting to reduce her weight. He wanted her to know that custody would not change even if she became healthy. Arrangement. A wave of wrath swept over me. The same rage I get when families hinder the healing of their loved ones. What was it that he said? Jennifer appeared uneasy. He claimed that Maria needed to get out of her fantasy world, that the children hardly remember her, and that they now refer to his new wife as Mom. I turned back to face Maria, who had covered her head with a blanket. For this reason, weight loss surgery is more than just surgery. It involves destroying the whole psychological framework that upholds harmful actions. I want you to look at me, Maria. No answer. Maria, your destiny and value are not determined by Robert's judgment. Your viewpoint is the only one that counts when it comes to your rehabilitation. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she pushed the duvet down just enough to reveal them. But he's right. What type of woman kills herself to leave her children? The type that went through trauma and lacked the resources to deal with it? The type that is now receiving those instruments. What if it's too late, though? What if they still don't want me even after I shed all this weight? Every geriatric patient should have this chat, but most do not. What occurs if the outside incentives don't work out? What if all that was damaged isn't fixed by decreasing weight? Let me ask you a question, Maria. Would you still want to lose weight if I could promise that your kids would never want to date you? She remained silent for a while. Then hardly perceptible. I'm not sure. That's the issue. The decisions made by others cannot affect your ability to heal. Regardless of how other people react, your decision to live a better life must be your own. Maria's weight increased by 3 pounds the following morning. She had managed to get more food than she was supposed to, most likely by persuading a kind guest or employee to bring her something. This pattern is not new to me. Food craving is triggered by emotions, causes embarrassment, which in turn causes more searching for food. Maria, we must speak. She didn't look at him. I am aware that I made a mistake. Making a mistake isn't the issue. The issue is giving up. Describe your meal to me. Someone in the adjacent room pitied me, went to the cafeteria and brought me some cookies. How many cookies are there? The entire bundle. Trying to decide how direct to be, I sat down. I had discovered that while too much hardness could set off Maria's stress reactions, too much softness could be misunderstood as sympathy. Those cookies didn't, Maria. Did they help you feel better about Robert's call? No. Have they made any changes to your circumstances? No. What did they achieve, then? When she finally turned to face me, I could see that she was upset, not with me, but with herself. Once more, they made me a failure. No, they made you human, but they also demonstrated to us that you still think that eating can help with emotional issues. Until we change that idea, you will find this software difficult to use. I scheduled a lengthy consultation with Dr. Paradise for that afternoon. I've discovered that years have shown that therapeutic breakthroughs frequently occur when a patient is experiencing a crisis and their normal barriers are down. Maria and Dr. Paradise spent 3 hours together that day. He appeared worn out when he came to brief me. Beneath her intense grief over her children, she harbors anger toward Robert, her family, and the system that took them away. She fears that she will become a bad person if she allows herself to experience that fury. Instead, she eats. She feels bad after eating to dull her rage. Eating, and then eating to make the guilt go away. It's the ideal cycle. What would you advise? We must assist her in realizing that she has valid complaints, that anger may be constructive, and that being upset about injustice does not equate to being a poor mother. She is a human being because of that. I sat with Maria once more that night. I choose to share something personal this time. Let me share a personal story with you, Maria. I have 40 years of medical experience. I've witnessed patients pass away due of their relatives, permitted their damaging actions. I've witnessed kids suffer because their parents refuse to be accountable for their well-being. And what do you know? It enrages me. She seems taken aback. You become irate? I become angry, of course. Rage about unfairness. Rage at avoidable pain. It's not a weakness in character. I'm inspired to keep fighting for my patients because of it. However, what if I lose my temper and say something I can't take back? What if you don't lose your temper and pass away without saying anything? She seemed to be struck by this. She remained silent for a few minutes. Then, "Doctor, I'm upset. I'm angry now. Robert abandoned me when I most needed him, then took my kids by using my weight against me. My family left me. Tribal health services let me down time and time again. Everyone simply left." Excellent. Since you arrived, that is the first sincere statement you have made. What should I do with that rage, though? You make advantage of it. You become so enraged that you disprove them all. You get so enraged that you defend your health, your future, and your life. You begin to use your anger as fuel instead of consuming it. Something had changed by daybreak. To have a better understanding of her food plan, Maria requested a meeting with a nutritionist. She engaged fully in physical therapy, exerting more effort than she had previously. She started to lose weight once more. But when her sister Sarah eventually arrived a week later, that was the true test. Sarah entered Maria's room as I was going over her progress reports. Compared to Maria, she was smaller. She was most likely in her early 40s and had the worn appearance of someone who has put in a lot of effort during her life. But her expression clearly had a hint of coldness. A verdict that was already in the books. "So, this is where you ended up," Sarah remarked, casting a disapproving glance around the hospital room. Maria stiffened all over. She was reverting to her old habits, which included defensiveness, humiliation, and a desire to fade away. Then, however, an unforeseen event occurred. Maria straightened her posture in bed and she turned to face her sister. Sarah looked surprised. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm here doing the hardest thing I've ever done, and you're here to judge me for it, just like always." I could tell this conversation was going to turn toxic, so I started to step in, but Maria held up her hand. "No, doctor. Now, I need to say this. Yes, Sarah. I ended up in the hospital, getting help, fighting to save my life." "Where did you end up?" Sarah's facade cracked slightly. "I had my own problems, Maria. You couldn't what? Make a phone call. Check on me occasionally. You couldn't show up until I was literally dying? That's not fair. What's not fair is abandoning your sister and then showing up to criticize her recovery. I know I made mistakes. But where were you when I was drowning? Where were you when I lost my kids? Where were you when I was alone in that trailer for months?" She finally added, "I came here to see if you were serious about this, if you were really going to change." Maria gazed at her firmly, obviously not expecting this version of herself. "I am serious, but not because you showed up and not because you approve." After Sarah left without saying goodbye, Maria went to me and asked, "Did I do the right thing?" "You did the necessary thing. You stood up for yourself. That's recovery, Maria. Because I deserve better than dying alone in a trailer. Simply losing weight, but finding your voice." That night, Maria lost an additional 2 pounds, but more significantly, something had changed. She was starting to fight for her right to exist, to matter, to take up space in the world, and not just for her health. The breaking point had not broken her. Rather, it had shown the strength that had always been there. By week 8, Maria had lost 127 pounds, and at 587 pounds, she was finally a surgical candidate, but I wasn't ready to operate just yet. When you show me you can maintain your weight loss for 2 consecutive weeks without supervision, Her face falls. What do you mean? I mean, I'm discharging you. Half the battle. I needed to see sustained behavioral changes and psychological stability before I would risk putting her under anesthesia. Doctor, now when can we schedule the surgery? Maria asked during one of our weekly consultations. The question was progress. 8 weeks ago, she had been afraid to hope for tomorrow, let alone plan for a surgical future. Surgery is the test that separates patients who are ready for surgery from those who will regain weight afterward. You will be sent to a supervised apartment facility for 2 weeks, where you will be responsible for your own meals, schedule, and outpatient therapy sessions. The controlled hospital environment offers structure that won't exist in real life, and if patients are unable to control their eating habits outside of the hospital, surgery will be scheduled. Becomes just another failed intervention. On Monday, Maria moved into the transitional facility. On Wednesday, the facility supervisor called me with concerns. Drive Nowzaradan Maria hasn't left her room in 2 days, eating her prescribed meals but refusing to participate in any activities or therapy sessions. I drove over right away and discovered Maria sitting by the window in her tiny apartment, staring out at the parking lot, not turning around, and thinking, I don't know how to be around people. One of the hidden challenges of massive weight loss is that patients become accustomed to being alone, and re-entering social spaces feels overwhelming. The shame doesn't go away just because the numbers on the scale change. Now, in the hospital, everyone knew why I was there. Out here, people stare. They judge. It's easier to just stay inside. Maria, how long have you been outside this room since you moved in? Maybe 20 minutes to go to the grocery store with the aide. The checkout clerk looked at my food choices as if she were deciding whether I deserved to eat, and I sat down opposite her. Let me ask you something. Do you think those people's opinions determine your worth? Logically, no, but emotionally, yes. Then we're not ready for surgery. She looked at me sharply. What do you mean? Surgery will make you smaller, but it won't make other people kinder. It won't stop stupid remarks or judgmental remarks. When people ask you how you lost weight, if you can't handle being in public at 587 pounds, how do you think you'll handle it at 300 pounds? Over the course of the following week, I worked with Maria on what I refer to as public exposure therapy. We started small, eating one meal in the dining room with other residents, walking to the facility's mailbox, and sitting in the common area for 15 minutes. Every step was a struggle, and Maria's anxiety would rise, her breathing would become shallow, and she would want to withdraw too. The breakthrough occurred during week 2 when Maria attended a support group meeting for the first time, where 6 other patients in different stages of their weight loss journeys shared their experiences. When it was her turn to speak, Maria was silent for a long time before saying, I used to think my weight was the worst thing. Gradually, she realized that other people's reactions were about their own discomfort, not her worth as a person. Concerning me. But after the meeting, Maria came up to me and said, Doctor, I want to call my kids now. What changed your mind? I realized I've been waiting for permission to be their mother again. From Robert, from my family, from you. But permission isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you give yourself. But after listening to everyone, I realized it was just the most obvious thing. 8-year-old Aiden was courteous but far away. 6-year-old Sophia hardly remembered her. After just 10 minutes of conversation, Maria sobbed for an hour. However, she then demonstrated to me that she was prepared for surgery. She went to her therapy session, ate her recommended meal, and scheduled a follow-up call for the next week. I didn't eat my feelings, but that phone call hurt more than anything else, doctor. After sensing them, I decided to continue on. Maria, that's exactly what life is like after surgery. Surgery will stop your body from overeating, but it won't stop you from feeling bad about yourself. You simply demonstrated your ability to manage both. On a Tuesday in October, the day of surgery arrived. At 584 pounds, Maria's weight remained constant. In fact, during her transitional phase, she had shed an additional 3 pounds. I saw dread and resolve in her eyes as the surgery team prepared her. What if something goes wrong today, doctor? You've made it through all life has thrown at you thus far, Maria. You won't go to allow yourself to be defeated by surgery right now. The actual procedure was difficult, but standard for someone with my background. Patients weighing more than 500 pounds require more care when undergoing gastric bypass surgery. The anatomy is warped. The tissue is more brittle. The hazards associated with the anesthetic are higher. However, Maria's body reacted favorably to her meticulous pre-operative preparation. Jennifer Martinez was waiting in the family room when I came out of the OR 4 hours later. There were no relatives present. Sarah hadn't came back. Jennifer had stayed because she knew someone had to be there when Maria woke up, even though Robert was not going to arrive and James never returned calls. Now, doctor, how did it go? Excellent. No issues. Although Maria now has a new tool, tomorrow is when the real job begins. Like most patients who have major surgery, Maria woke up feeling dazed and disoriented. She tried asking for water first, but her new stomach could only take small sips. This is usually unexpected, since it goes from having an egg-sized stomach and being able to eat and drink enormous amounts of food. I barely drank a tablespoon of broth, but now, doctor, I feel so full. Maria, that's your new normal. At this point, your stomach can store 2 to 3 ounces. You won't be able to binge eat again, but you will eat tiny portions often. I observed Maria adjusting to her life after surgery throughout the course of the following 3 days. The physical limitations were difficult. She had to chew everything well, could only consume pureed foods, and was unable to consume liquids with meals, but there was an immediate and significant psychological impact. On the 3rd day, she informed me, I no longer have cravings. Don't take that as a cure, Maria. As your body adjusts, some of those cravings will resurface. The surgery bought you time to learn new behaviors, but it didn't improve your relationship with food. It's the oddest thing. I see food, but I don't feel compelled to eat it. That's because the surgery changed your hunger hormones. Dr. Paradise asked her to describe the experience of having such drastic physical restriction during her first post-surgical therapy session. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time, Maria said, because I can't use food to cope the way I used to. Liberating because I finally feel in control of something. What happens when you want to eat your emotions but can't? I guess I'll have to actually feel them. Dr. Paradise looked at me and nodded. The surgery is over, but your journey is just beginning. You're going to lose weight rapidly over the next 18 months, but you're also going to face every emotion you've been eating to avoid. Are you ready for that? I sat with Maria one last time before she returned to the transitional facility for her recovery period, the realization that sets successful post-surgical patients apart from those who found ways to eat around their surgery. Window, then back at me. Doctor, I've spent the last 2 years dying slowly, and I think I can handle living quickly. 2 weeks after the surgery, Maria had shed another 37 pounds, was eating well, walking on her own, and going to all of her therapy sessions. But most significantly, she had called her kids 3 more times, and although the conversations were still challenging, they were getting longer. The surgery had gone perfectly, but as I watched Maria adjust to her new life, I knew the most difficult obstacles remained. Although surgery can change the structure of the body, it cannot change a lifetime of learned behaviors and emotional patterns. Maria was going to learn what it was like to live without food as emotional protection, and that experience would put everything she had learned about her own strength to the test. 18 months after the surgery, she weighed 287 pounds, having lost nearly 430 pounds, or more than half of her initial body weight. The procedure was a huge success by all medical standards, but success in Maria was struggling. Doctor, now I don't understand what's happening to me, she remarked at one of our follow-up sessions. Bariatric medicine isn't just about numbers on a scale. It's about whether patients can sustain their losses while building meaningful lives. She had a totally different appearance. Compared to when I had first seen her, Her eyes were strangely both brighter and more haunting, her face was emaciated, and her body was swimming in loose skin. Describe your experience to me. I'm constantly upset at everything, at Robert, at my relatives, at grocery store strangers. I used to eat when I was angry because I sometimes feel like breaking things. I can't now. So I simply become angry. Consume it. Many postoperative patients experience this psychological reckoning. For decades, Maria's main coping strategy has been food. In its absence, she was feeling the full intensity of the feelings she had been repressing by eating. What caused the most recent incident? Last week, Aiden gave me a call. He is 9. Right now. He also wanted to share his school play with me. He was ecstatic as he described how he was cast in the major part. And what do you know? I was envious. I am envious of my own son as he is experiencing things that I am not. I gave a nod. Although it didn't seem like it to Maria, this was progress. What took place following the call? I opened the refrigerator after going to the kitchen. I wanted to devour everything I saw for 20 minutes, but I was physically unable to do it. I have a small stomach. Thus, I struck the wall instead of slamming the door. Did you feel better after punching the wall? No. My neighbor was frightened and my hand hurt. I always explain to them that surgery is merely a tool because of this. It does not treat the underlying mental problems that underlie compulsive eating. Instead, it imposes portion restriction. Maria was learning that she had been hiding a much deeper relationship with suffering behind her relationship with food. Let me ask you a question, Maria. How did you manage before you gained weight? Challenging feelings? She gave this some serious thinking. I doubt I ever figured out how. When I was 16, my mother passed away, and my father drank to cope with his anguish. I ate to cope with it. I ate after Robert left. I ate when I lost the kids. The only thing that stopped the anguish was food. I'm constantly feeling everything now, and I'm not sure how to handle it. Maria had been seeing Dr. Paradise during her weight loss journey, but her emotional instability had escalated. Notably, during the previous few months, Maria hesitantly accepted his recommendation for intense therapy sessions. Doctor, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I miss being large sometimes now. People left me alone, at least when I weighed 700 pounds. Everyone now has different ideas regarding my appearance, my next course of action, and whether or not I'm fixed. I was interested in this. What sort of views? Last month, Sarah came to visit. It's the first time since Houston. Well, now you have no excuse not to get your kids back, she continued, glancing at me. I'm a better mother because I'm losing weight. What did you say in response? I assured her that my weight was never a factor in being a good mother. It was about being present, stable, and emotionally available. I'm working on those things, but they won't be miraculously resolved just because I can squeeze through doors. This now demonstrated extraordinary insight. Many people who have had surgery struggle with the belief that losing weight will make everything better. They may feel like failures when it doesn't, even when. Striking bodily change. How are the children reacting to your modifications? It's not that simple. Sophia hardly recalls my previous existence. For her, I'm just a random caller who wants to be involved in her life. Aiden, however, recalls the past. He seems wary, as if he's waiting for me to let him down once more. Robert, too. Maria's face became stern. Robert is afraid. He centered his custody argument on my weight, which made me an unfit mother. That justification is no longer valid. And he's frantically trying to come up with new excuses for me to miss seeing my children. One of the most serious elements of family dysfunction related to weight is this. Family members who exploit a patient's weight as an excuse for subpar care are forced to face their own actions when the patient loses weight. Now what is he saying? That I'm erratic? That the procedure was extreme? That before he will consider altering the custody agreement, I must demonstrate that I can continue to lose weight? This pattern is not new to me. Members of the family. When obese patients recover, those who forsake them frequently create new challenges, since admitting their own cruelty is the only other option. Let me ask you a challenging question, Maria. Will your recuperation still be worthwhile if Robert never gives you greater access to your kids? She remained silent for a long time. Then I would have refused 6 months ago. However, now that I'm no longer doing this for them, the answer is yes. For myself, I'm doing it. What time did that change occur? When I discovered that I had spent 40 years spent living for the approval of others, and I almost died from it. Whether Robert believes I'm a good mother, whether Sarah believes I'm successful, or whether my children want to be with me doesn't define my value. I had been hoping for this psychological breakthrough. In order to truly heal from morbid obesity, individuals must cultivate an internal feeling of value independent of approval from others. Maria's voyage, however, was far from finished. After 3 months, she encountered her largest challenge as of yet. Robert got married again. Maria's parental rights were officially severed without her knowledge or consent, as they not only remarried but also adopted Aiden and Sophia. Maria called me right away after this conversation, and I could tell by the sound of her voice that she was upset when she tried to call them, and the new stepmother said, "I'm sorry, but Robert feels it's better for the children if you don't contact them anymore. They have a stable family now, and he doesn't want to confuse them." Hardly surviving. I dropped everything and drove to her apartment, saying, "Dr. Now, they took my kids away legally forever. I'll never be their mother again." I discovered her sobbing while seated on the kitchen floor, surrounded by empty food containers. "Did you eat all of this, Maria?" I made an effort. I wanted to eat till I lost all sense of my body. However, I was only able to eat a few bites of each before becoming ill. I'm now surrounded by food that I can't eat and experiencing pain from which I can't get away. This was the time of the final test. Maria had recovered from the most terrible loss imaginable, the irreversible legal loss of her children, but she had also dropped about 430 pounds, improved her health, learned coping mechanisms, and found inner drive for her rehabilitation. I need you to pay close attention, Maria. You were treated cruelly, unfairly, and most likely illegally. However, Robert wins if you use this as a reason to abandon all of your hard work. He has the power to ruin not only your bond with your kids, but all of your life. But now, doctor, what's the point? I became healthy because of them. No, they weren't. Do you recall what you told me 3 months ago? You claimed to be acting in your own best interests. Tears were streaming down her face as she gazed up at me. I can't recall how to accomplish it. After that, we'll work things out together. Maria faced the most difficult battle of her trip during the course of the following 6 months. Not against food, against weight, against physical constraints, but against hopelessness. She engaged an attorney to contest the adoption. She began working with teenagers who were battling addiction and familial trauma as a volunteer at a youth center on the reservation. She started giving speeches at other weight loss patient support groups. Above all, she discovered how to use her rage to advocate for causes. The need for improved mental health resources on reservations was the subject of her testimony before the State Assembly. She authored essays discussing the link between fat and trauma. She started speaking up for those that systems had overlooked, created to assist them. Maria had maintained her weight decrease for more than 2 years and weighed 275 pounds a year later. Although she never got custody of Aiden and Sophia back, she had established a meaningful life free from their presence. She said, "Dr. Now, at our last follow-up visit, losing my children was the worst thing that ever happened to me because I spent the majority of my adult life thinking that other people, my weight, my function as a mother, and my family's acceptance were what made me valuable. And who are you? I'm someone who survived, who stands up for those who are unable to stand up for themselves, who demonstrates that no matter how far you fall, you can choose to get back up. As I watched Maria leave my office that day, walking with ease and confidence, taking up space in the world without apology, I thought about what her case had taught me about the true nature of healing. But it also gave me the freedom to discover who I am when I'm not trying to be what everyone else wants. Losing weight isn't really the goal of recovery from morbid obesity. It's about learning to live with dignity in a society that frequently rejects that dignity, finding inner value despite rejection from others, and surviving the emotional fallout from healing as well as the physical effects of trauma. Maria had come into my care as a 714-pound woman dying alone in a trailer, abandoned by everyone who should have protected her, and she was leaving as someone who had learned that survival isn't just about surviving. It's about repeatedly deciding to live a life filled with meaning, purpose, and optimism. That's human accomplishment, not simply medical success.